All right, welcome back. We are going to kind of piggyback off of what we learned yesterday. Today we are on lesson 114, simplifying fraction answers. We talked about reducing fractions yesterday, and I mentioned that there's another way to another name like reducing, but it's called simplifying, and today that is what we are going to be talking about. So we are going to add and subtract fractions and mixed numbers, and then simplify the answer, okay? So you will see questions on homework, on tests, that say, write the answer in the simplest form. So I will explain what that form is and what that looks like, okay? So for this one, I know that you can see the answer for this one, but let's just talk about it. We are adding 2/3 plus 2/3. So we talked about this a few weeks ago. When you add 2/3 plus 2/3, when you add fractions like 2/3 plus 2/3, you keep the bottom number, the denominator, the same, right? So we know it's going to be something over 3. And then hopefully you guys know what's 2 plus 2? 4. So our answer is 4/3. That is the answer to the problem, but that is not the answer in simplest form, which is what we are trying to find. We need to simplify the answer. Okay, so number 1 is very important. We write improper fractions, which is what 4/3 is, as mixed numbers or whole numbers. That's how we simplify something. The second thing, which we'll talk a little bit more about that when we do example number 2, we reduce fractions when possible. So to simplify an answer, if it's an improper fraction, you change it to a mixed number or a whole number. If it's not an improper fraction, it's just a regular fraction, you need to make sure that it's reduced. And then that is what simplifying means. Okay, those two things. If it's an improper fraction, you got to change it to a mixed number or a whole number. If it's just a fraction that needs to be reduced, you need to reduce it. And that will be kind of like what we did yesterday. Okay, so 4/3, how do we change an improper fraction into a mixed number? We've talked about this a few times. We'll just go over the steps one more time just to remind you. Over there on the left, I have 4/3 written out. The first step we need to do, how many times can 3 go into 4? How many times can 3 go into 4? It can only go in one time. With how many left over? With 1 left over, and then our denominator stays the same. 1 and 1/3. I don't know if you guys know the way to check this answer, but I will show you real quick. You are going to multiply and then add. You're going to kind of go counterclockwise, or no, you are going clockwise, just kind of going to the left. So you're going to do 3 times 1, which is 3, and then 3, well, that's kind of hard to see because it's very small. Let me try that again. 3 times 1, and then you get 3, and then you do the answer plus 1, and you get 4. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and then the bottom number stays the same. So that's how you change an improper fraction into a mixed number, and then to change the mixed number back into an improper fraction, you do those steps. We can see that these numbers are the same, which means we did it correctly. Okay, for your homework today, you are not going to need to know how to do this part. I'm just showing you that so that you can check your answers. So as long as you know how to do this part, you should be good. Okay, 3 goes into 4 one time with a remainder of 1, so that goes on top of the fraction bar, and then your denominator, 3, stays the same. Okay, let's do the next one together. That's going to help us with this one right here. Okay, so example number 2 says subtract 3/4 and 1/4. 3/4 minus 1/4. Remember, when we're adding or subtracting, if the bottom numbers are the same, we keep it the same. So 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. Is 2/4 simplified? Remember what we talked about yesterday? We need to reduce fractions when possible. So we just learned this yesterday. You need to look at the top and the bottom number and say, what number can I divide by the top and the bottom to make it smaller, right? Or to make the numbers smaller. So what can we divide 2 and 4 by? You can divide 2 and 4 both by 2. So I'm going to write that down here. 2/4 divided by 2, divided by 2. What I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So our answer in simplest form, we're simplifying here, is 1/2. Okay? We're going to do a couple practices because your homework's going to have a lot of problems like this. So we are going to go to just a separate sheet, and I'm going to show you a couple more examples of this. Let's do, if you have your textbook, we're going to do some more of the problems. And we'll do some mixed numbers as well. Okay, let's do, if you're in your textbook, we're doing example for 5 3/5 plus 6 4/5. Okay, we talked about this when we talked about adding fractions and mixed numbers. Remember, we are going to break it up into 2 different pieces. The first thing we're going to do, we're just going to do the whole numbers. 5 plus 6 is what? 5 plus 6 is 11. Okay, and now we're going to add 3/5 and 4/5. 3/5 plus 4/5 equals, remember, keep the bottom number the same. 3 plus 4 is 7. So it's 11 7/5. But is there something wrong with that? It's not in simplest form because 7/5 is an improper fraction. We need to change it into a mixed number. Okay, so we'll do that in blue. We got 7/5. How many times can 5 go into 7? 5 can go, that's supposed to be an arrow. 5 can go into 7 only one time. With how many left over? 2. And then you keep the bottom number the same. So 1 2/5 is the same thing as 7/5. 7/5 is an improper fraction. 1 2/5 is a mixed number. Okay, so now what do? We've got 11, and instead of that, we're going to say we've got this one. So we've got 11 plus 1 2/5. So 11 plus 1 2/5. Remember, all we got to do is the whole numbers first. So 11 plus 1 is 12. And then we just put the 2/5 over there, right? 2/5 plus nothing is still 2/5. Okay, so our answer is 12 2/5. Okay. The next one we are going to do, I'm going to read a word problem to you. Going to read a word problem to you. Nicholas exercises each day by walking. The route he walks each morning is 3.5 miles long. And the route he walks each evening is 4 2/3 miles long. All together, that keyword there, all together, how many miles does Nicholas walk each day? So is this addition or subtraction? Well, if he walks this much in the morning and this much at night, and they want to know how much he walks all together or total, we are going to add those numbers together. Okay, so we'll do it in red. Remember, we do our whole numbers first. 3 plus 4 is 7. And then we've got, oh, I wrote this wrong, sorry. I was like, this is getting a little bit harder. That's supposed to be a 3. Sorry, people. That's 1/3. I promise this is going to be easier than it would have been if it was 1/2. All right, so we've got 1/3 plus 2/3. 1/3 plus 2/3. 1/3 plus 2/3. Remember, we keep the bottom number the same. And then 1 plus 2 is 3. What's 3/3? Do we know what that is? Can we write 7 3/3? Is that a good answer? Nope, it's not in its simplest form. Remember, we talked about 3/3 before. We talked about 13 13ths. We've talked about 2 halves. We've talked about 7 sevenths. 3/3 equals 1. So really, we're just doing 7 plus 1 equals 8. So how many miles does he go total? Our friend Nicholas goes 8 miles total. Okay, 8 miles total. If you are a little bit confused about the 3/3, you can do it the same way. 3 goes into 3 how many times? 1 time with 0 left over. 0/3 is nothing. 0 doesn't mean anything, so your answer is just 1. So that's where we got the 7 plus 1 from. Okay. All right, we are going to do one more problem. One more problem. We're working more with mixed numbers today because we just did reducing fractions yesterday. So let's do a subtraction problem. We're going to do 7 and 7/8 minus 1 and 1/8. 7 and 7/8 minus 1 and 1/8. So again, we're going to focus mostly on, whoa, that got really big. We're going to focus on our whole numbers first. So 7 minus 1. Don't forget this minus sign. On your homework, you're going to have both. They're going to be mixed up. So make sure you're looking at that so you don't do the whole problem wrong. 7 minus 1 is 6. And now we've got to do 7/8 right here. 7/8 minus 1/8. Okay? Remember, we keep the bottom number the same. What's 7 minus 1? 7 minus 1 is 6. Can we leave it like that? 6 and 6/8? 6/8, like we learned yesterday, can still be reduced. Can still be reduced. So what number can I divide by 6 and 8? That goes in evenly, no remainders. We don't want any remainders. If you said 2, you would be correct, but I can't hear you because you're at home. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So our answer, instead of 6 and 6/8, our answer is going to be 6 and 3/4. 6 and 3/4 is the same thing as 6 and 6/8. It's just simplified. This one over here is simplified. Okay? All right, on your homework, like I said, you're going to have a bunch of problems like that. You are going to have a couple other problems that will help prepare you for the test on Friday. I only need a couple minutes to review, so if you'll stay with me for 2 minutes, then you'll be set for your homework. We're going to talk about fractions, percents, and decimals. Fractions we don't really need to talk about because you already know this. You're going to have a question on your homework that looks like that, and it's going to say, what fraction of the circle is shaded? And you already know everything about fractions. You can even simplify fractions. So if you look at that fraction, you know what part is shaded? Part over whole. 3 parts are shaded over the whole 3/4. Okay? 3/4 are shaded. You're also going to see that same exact picture, but the question is going to say what percent of the circle is shaded. Okay? There are a few things that you have to memorize. Okay? 3/4 is the same thing as 75%. 1/4 is the same thing as 25%. Okay? Those are 2 things that you need to know. Obviously, come on, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4/4 is the same thing as 100% because it's all the way filled, right? All 4 of those pieces are filled. And then the last one that you probably already know, 2/4 or 1/2. Remember, we just learned how to simplify that, is 50%. 1/2, 50%. If you take a test and you get a 50% on your test, that means you got half of the questions correct. If you take a test and you get a 100% on your test, that means you got all of the questions correct. If you take a test and you get a 75%, that means you got 3/4 of the questions correct. That is all you need to know about fractions and percentages. These are the most important percentages. You probably don't need to know all of the other percentages. Okay, so if I were you, I would write these down, pause the video, and write these down because this will help you on the test, on Thursday's homework, and on today's homework. Okay, pause the video now. Last thing I'm going to show you. Sorry, this is taking a little bit longer than 2 minutes. I apologize. You are just going to write numbers as decimals. Okay, we've done this before, just want to review. Remember, if I'm writing this as a decimal, the digits after the decimal are equal to how many zeros we have on the bottom, okay? So 0 decimal, I should have 1, 2, 3 numbers after. Oh look, 1, 2, 3, that's easy. Okay, the digits after the decimal, so what I'm about to write, should be equal, the number of digits should be equal to how many zeros I have. So I should have 2 numbers after the decimal. So 2 numbers, 1, 2, 2 digits, I guess. Okay, so that is how you convert decimal or fractions into decimals. You're going to need to know how to do that on the homework. Oh man, I just made up random numbers, but this is actually your last question of homework, so you're welcome. You guys are going to do great on your homework. You will have problems just over what we've covered in this video. There won't be anything else in the homework. So if you need to watch the video again, go ahead and do that. Good luck on your homework. Remember, again, you can take the homework as many times as you want. So if you get a 2 out of 10 and you're like, man, that wasn't very good, try it again. I promise it will help you for the test on Friday. Okay, so good luck on your homework tonight, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Happy Taco Tuesday.